guys around the house. In this video I'm going to show you how to make a really solid shelving unit like this. By following this simple tutorial you'll be able to adapt your shelving to whatever size you want. Now my shelving unit is going along this wall here. It's 1.60 m long and I'm going to come 60 centimeters deep. And the reason I'm going to do it 60 centimeters deep is because that's exactly half the width of the OSB board that I've got. And by doing this it just means I can do a neat cut straight up the middle, and two pieces of that will make two shelves of my unit. Now the piece of wood is too long for what I need, but by cutting it carefully I can use the end piece across the back for a third shelf. So that's just a little money saving tip for you there. Now for my shelving I'm only using two different types of wood. I'm using stud timber, and this is available in places like Wicks and B&Q. You can use whatever wood you want. If you're putting something exceptionally heavy on your shelving, then you may want to go for something a bit deeper like a 4x2, but that's entirely up to you. The other wood I'm using is OSB board, and I'm using this for my shelving. This stuff is 17 mm thick and it comes in sizes of 1.2 meters by 2.4 meters. Again, you can use whatever wood you want. You can use plywood or any old timber you got lying around the place, but I've used this because this is a spare sheet I had lying around from when I did my garage roof. The first thing we have to do is work out exactly what size lengths of timber we need. So we'll get the measuring tape, and I'm going into this bit of the wall, and the exact size I need is 157 centimeters. So I'm going to cut 6 lengths at 157 centimeters. The way I do this is hook my measuring tape over the end of the piece of wood. I'm going to measure down 157 centimeters, and I'm going to go and chop this on the chop saw. Don't forget to keep all your offcuts as we're going to use these later. Then, rather than use the measuring tape, take this first piece of wood that you cut, just put a little cross on it. Now you can use this one as your template for measuring all the other pieces. And it's what that does, it just gives you a bit more accuracy. If you use the measuring tape each time, you'll find that you'll probably be a mil or two out each time. So just put this piece on top of this piece and mark a line. Instead of using a piece of wood as a template, drawing a line and cutting it each time, you could also use a different method. You could put a guide at the back of your chop saw. Some chop saws come with this facility, and it basically goes back to the length you want, and you can just butt your piece of wood up exactly the same each time and chop through it. It's up to you. The important thing to remember when using any blade or cutting disc is that that blade will be a couple of millimeters thick, and that couple of millimeters will be removed from the wood that you're cutting, and it will be waste. So remember that when you're cutting, if this side is the piece of wood you want to keep, then you want to make sure that your blade lines up with the line on that side. You don't want to eat into the length that you're trying to keep. So here, for example, I can see my pencil line, and this blade is to the right of the pencil line, or otherwise I'll find the piece I cut will be a couple of millimeters shorter than I wanted it. So it's just a little handy tip for you. And to make these shelves a bit stronger, we're going to use the timbers this way up, because the grain is stronger that way. If we put it that way, it's a little bit weaker. It wouldn't make too much difference. The only downside of having it around the way I'm doing it is you've obviously got this little bit which will stick down into the depth of your shelf. Now you need to remember, when you're doing your shelf, with me I want it 60 centimeters deep. So obviously from the front of here to the back of here is 60 centimeters, so the piece in between needs to be 60 centimeters minus the width of this piece of wood plus this piece of wood, and that goes for whatever the width of the wood that you're using is. So once you've got the length you need, just take a measuring tape, mark out the length you want with a pencil, go to your chop saw, and we'll cut the length we need. So exactly the same again, put a cross and use that as your template. Let's cut another 5 of these, and then that's all the wood needed for my shelving. Now I've cut all my cross members to go across the shelves. Now I just need to drill 2 holes through the side of each corner on the longer pieces, and then we'll put some screws through that into these shorter pieces and secure it all together as a frame. To do this, just take a piece of wood, rest it up in the air on another piece of wood, and then let's just put 2 holes through the wood like that. Turn it round and do the same to the other side. Just do this for all the other pieces of wood. Now these are the screws I'm using. They're gold screw. I got them from Screwfix. These ones are 5x70, which are perfect for the size wood I'm using, but obviously you need to use the right length screws for the size wood that you're using in your project. All we do here is we get the screws, and I'm going to place them through these end pieces of wood into these shorter pieces and secure the whole thing together. You're best off putting one screw in each corner and then go back and do the second one after. If you put two in one corner and it's slightly out, you'll find that it'll twist the whole frame. So there we go, that's that one screwed together. Now I'm going to see how strong this is at the end, but I may well add a middle brace across the middle. I'll see how I go. Obviously, as I always say, planning is the key. You want to make sure you sized and bought all the right pieces of wood. However, if you can see an improvement that can be made along the way, well, do it if you have to. If it means getting another piece of wood, so what? Now do exactly the same for the other two shelves. Okay, so I've got the three frames of my shelves secured together. I now need to put 3 vertical lengths across my wall. So I'm going to measure how high I want this, and I'll cut those down to size. I'm going to take my first vertical length, and I'm going to put it against this wall. I'm going to drill 3 holes through this, and I'm going to secure through this piece of wood with some screws into some plugs that I'm going to put into the wall. So using a small masonry drill bit, I'm going to go through the hole in the wood that I just made with my wood drill bit, and I'm going to just put a little guide hole in the brick wall so I can follow through that in a minute with a bigger drill using my SDS drill. Do this for the other 2 holes. Then if you just look by here, you can see there's a little mark in the brick which I can now use to go through with my bigger drill bit using my SDS drill, and that should power through it no problem at all. If you're doing this onto a stud wall or a wall that's already made of wood, you can quite happily screw straight into the wood. I'm only doing this because I've got a masonry wall and I'm putting these vertical pieces on here to give me something to secure the rest of the shelves to, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But obviously you don't always have to do this. These are the wall plugs I'm using today. If you want more specific information on using wall plugs, different sizes and what screws to use, please watch my other video on how to use wall plugs. There'll be a link in the description section below, and there should be a link popping up on the screen about now. I'm using these screws to fix these vertical pieces to the wall. These are gold screw, I got them from Screwfix. They're 5 by 6 millimeters, and that's what they look like. And take your wall plug and just pop it in the hole ready for your screw. Like that. And do the same for the other 2 holes. And place your screws through your piece of wood and into the plugs. If you had a flat floor, you could cut these to exactly the same length. My floor is slightly uneven. So what I've done is I've cut this one just slightly too long, and then I've put it in the place where I want it. And put your spirit level on top of your first one. Get it so it's bang on level. Draw a line, and that is exactly where I need to cut this one. So this one may be slightly shorter or longer according to the floor height, but the top will be bang on level. If you've got a perfectly flat floor, this is irrelevant, and you can just cut them all to the same length. Then do exactly the same for the other 2 pieces of wood. And this is where the strength comes in. I'm going to use these pieces, screw them into these pieces of wood, and then the shelf is going to sit on top of these, and that means that all the vertical load is supported directly on these legs and not just by using screws. Again, if your floor is level, you can do these to the same length and push them straight into place. Now I've cut mine to the height that I want my shelves. Now they're all going to be slightly out, so again, what I'll do is start on the lowest side of the floor, which I know is this side, put it on this side, and this is showing me, as I suspected, this one is slightly higher. So I just need to trim a little bit off this one until I get these 2 level, and then work my way across to the highest point, and I imagine the end one will have to come down even more, and that way all my shelves will be level. And once I've got this bottom row of these done, the rest I can cut to the same length, because this shelf will be level and I'll work off the level bottom shelf. And get the bubble level, then just take your pencil and draw a line across your piece of wood right here, and as you can see it's hardly anything, just a couple of mil. But a couple of mil on each post could make a difference of almost 8 mil by the time you get to the end of the shelf. So it's worth doing this and getting this right. You don't want your shelves at an angle. So I'm just going to go and shave a little bit off this on the chop saw, come back and see if it fits. So I've trimmed this down, I put the level on it, it's bang on. I'm going to do exactly the same with a 3rd post, and once these are all level, we can do the same with the front posts. Now I'm happy all three pieces are level. I'm going to do the same again. We're going to do 2 pilot holes, and then I'm going to drive some screws through into these pieces of timber so these are secured to the wall. The same for the other 2 pieces of wood. And get your pieces of wood and screw them into the vertical timbers behind. Now you've got a lovely solid base for your shelf to sit on. Do exactly the same for the other 2 timbers, and then we'll do exactly the same for the 3 timbers at the front. By using vertical lengths of timber into the wall, it's a lot easier to adjust things by just screwing into that timber where you need to. If you did it into the masonry each time, you've always got to drill that hole and put in a plug, and it's very difficult and it's very fiddly. Having a piece of timber, we can pretty much adjust things as we go along if we need to. So what I've done here is I've just rested the frame on top of these supports that I've screwed onto these timbers. Then we've got to use the spirit level this way, and we're going to see if that's level. Now this is too high here at the moment, so we need to work out what height timbers we need under these corners, and once we've done that we can go and cut them on the chop saw. So now I've used the spirit level along here this way and down that way, and I know that these posts are now cut to the right lengths. Obviously, as I've explained before, my garage floor isn't flat, so these are all different lengths. But the shelf will now be nice and level. I've now got to cut my 3 vertical posts on the front of the shelving unit down to size. I've cut these front posts down a few centimetres longer than I need them. So I do this by pushing this post up flush against the shelf below. I've got the spirit level sat on the top of the back post. I've got it so that the bubble is level, and then I'm going to mark a line on this front post where it needs to be cut. And then when I cut this, this will be bang on level with that back post. I'll now do the same for the other 2 posts. Don't forget, all these are going to be cut to different lengths. So when you take them out to cut them down on the chop saw, remember just to number them up so you know which one goes where. Now I'm going to cut these down to size. I've cut my 3 posts down to size. I've now got to attach these 3 front supports to these posts. I'm going to put some pilot holes through the supports, and then I'm going to drive a screw through into the posts. And that way the screw heads will be hidden on the other side and not visible to the front of the shelves, which doesn't really make a difference, it just looks a bit neater. And again, just make sure that your piece of wood is supported on another piece of wood when you're doing your pilot holes. So when you go through the wood with your drill bit, you don't want to blunten the tip of the drill bit on your concrete floor. Then take your front post and screw the bottom supports onto the post. You can see I've just done 2 screws slightly offset, bottom and top, and 1 in the middle for some extra support, and that should be fine. And you can just see that I'm driving the screws in through the support into the post, and that way you'll see no screw visible on the front post. Once all your screws are in, go and do exactly the same to the other 2 posts. I've now attached the supports to all the posts, so now the next thing to do is lift the posts up and drop the shelf on, and then screw them together. Now I'm going to put 2 pilot holes through this piece of wood here, and I'm going to drive 2 screws through this shelf into each post, and that will secure the posts to the shelf unit. Now before you put your second screw through the shelving unit into the post, just ensure that this post is upright and perfectly level by using a spirit level. Once you're happy it's level, drive your second screw through. Then just do exactly the same to the other 2 posts. Now we need to push this up against the wall and do exactly the same to the back posts. Now we secured all the posts to the frame of the first shelf, it's time to cut the shelf out of the OSB board. We'll then slot that in here, and then we can continue the process. So now I'm going to cut my piece of OSB board down to size. So what I've done is used a measuring tape. I've measured back 60 centimetres, which is the depth I need for my shelf. I've done the same on that side. I've drawn a line right the way across the piece of board. Now I'm going to use this, which is a circular saw, and I'm going to use that to cut the piece of wood. Now in order to keep a straight line, there's 2 ways you can do this. You want to get a straight edge for a start, and I'm just going to use this, which is the length of wood I got lying around. Now if you've got clamps, you can place this along the length of the board and clamp it into place. Or alternatively, with a piece of wood like this, I've just drilled 2 pilot holes at each end and I'm just going to screw down into my piece of board. I'm taking a closer look at the circular saw. You've got this little directional arrow there, and that is where the blade cuts, and you want that bang on in line with the pencil line that we've drawn. Now if you're using a guide like this, you need that to line up with the edge of the cutter, because this bit will rest against this as we slide it forward. So you need to get your pencil, and with that little arrow in line with that line, mark a line next to that. I'll do the same at the other end of the board. We'll draw another line and I'll screw the piece of wood flush with that line, and that will then be the perfect guide for me to cut the piece of wood. I've cut my first shelf down to size. Get your shelf and just slot that into place like that. As you can see, I've got a gap at this end. Because I'm utilising the one piece of wood I've got, I've cut it in a way that I've got to do each shelf in 2 pieces. So I've got a small piece here just to fit over into the end of my shelf. If you're buying all your wood from new, obviously you can cut this shelf in 1 piece if you want. I've just done this to save money with a piece of wood I got lying around. Go back out and use exactly the same method with your circular saw to cut all the other shelves. Now I'm going to drill some small pilot holes around the edge of the shelf. And I'm going to drive a few small screws through just to secure the shelving in place to the frame. Now I've drilled my pilot holes. I'm going to put a few screws through into the frame, and the screws I'm using are these gold screw from Screwfix, and they look like that. Now it's time to do our supports. So whatever height you want your shelf at, that's the height you need your support. Now obviously I've got this shelf level now, so all these neck supports I can just cut 6 all to exactly the same size. I'm going to make mine 50 centimeters and I'm going to go and cut those on the chop saw now. So I've cut my 6 supports to size, and it's the same again. Let's drill some pilot holes ready to put some screws through into the upstands. And then drive your screws through into the posts. And do this for all the supports on all the posts. I've now put all the supports in place, so I'll now go and get the shelf that I've cut and we'll place that on top. You can see a bit of a pattern forming here. It's just the same thing all over again. And now we're cutting all these ones the same size. It's so much easier. And just to show you how solid this already is, I can jump up and down on this and that ain't going anywhere. Tidy. Right, let's get one of the frames that we made earlier and slot that into place. And our supports. And again, some pilot holes through the back of this into our uprights. Then once the pilot holes are done, let's put some screws through the holes and drive them into the uprights. When you're putting your screws through, just do 1 hole in each post first of all, because what you'll find is the frame will sometimes twist a bit if it's a bit warm. Then once you've got that all in place, go round and put your second screw in. Otherwise you might find that it forces into a funny angle and it's not sat down on the supports properly. And with my shelves, because of the size of the piece of wood, they're actually slightly deeper than 60 centimeters, so I'm able to do a little slot and drop them slightly around the back posts. And the way to do this is just line your board up at an angle, take your pencil, just draw around like that, where the post is, and just cut a little slot out using either a jigsaw or a handsaw, knock the piece of wood out, and that'll just drop over the posts. Go and get your cut shelf, and just drop that into place. And just make sure that's flush with the frame on the ends. And again, we'll put some pilot holes around the end, and then we'll put some small screws down and secure it into the frame. So this shelf is now securely fastened down with screws. Now same again, let's get the height of the neck supports, cut them down to size, screw them in place, pilot holes, screws, and then we'll put our next frame on top and then the next shelf. There we go, that's the last screw. So you can see now we've got a lovely solid shelving unit, and you can see how strong this is, because I can jump up and down on it just like that, no problem at all. there we go, that's how to build a really nice solid shelving unit. So for more DIY, how-to, household tips and product review, please watch my other videos and don't forget to subscribe. I've been Pice Around the House. Ta-ta, farewell.